Welcome back to Meet the Makers. Today I have another awesome 3D printer with us. He is not only a 3D printer, but also a 3D modeler, and he sells his 3D prints online. So super excited to welcome Jordan. You may know him online as Tenacious 3D.
Hey, Danny. Happy to be here.
Can you just tell us how you got into 3D printing and maybe 3D modeling in general?
It started with 3D printing. I was working in an office with a friend of mine who had a Mars 2, and I thought that was really cool. And he's like, you should get one. And I got one. And right away, I started modeling in Tinkercad. I took some commissions with some work I did in Tinkercad and realized that Tinkercad was not enough. From there, I started dabbling in MeshMixer. And with that, you can do basically anything you do in any other 3D modeling app that's not straight up CAD software. And that's what I've been using. I've been doing most of my modeling on MeshMixer.
I don't consider myself a 3D modeler, but I dabble in 3D modeling from time to time. And Tinkercad is where I started too. There's so many different programs out there, and it's hard to always know the best place to go for that. I do think Tinkercad still to this day, I think it is, if you have zero experience of 3D modeling, I think it's a great place to start. It is definitely limiting, but what's your thoughts on that? Would you still recommend Tinkercad, or is there any other place that you tell people to jump into as a beginner?
I always point towards Tinkercad because it's free and it's accessible and it's supported. People working on it. MeshMixer is not supported. If you can't find something on YouTube or Google about it, it's on you or Reddit. But Tinkercad is fantastic. They've made recent updates that have improved on it exponentially since I started. Just being able to place an object onto an object automatically at whatever angle that's in. That was what made it hard to use, was not being able to do that. But I've been using it more frequently because a lot of what I do is model houses. Perfect for that.
Yeah, that was something I was curious about with MeshMixer. I'm not actually that familiar with it as a software. A lot of times when I have people asking about 3D modeling, I usually point towards either Blender or Nomad Sculpt for more organic things, and then Fusion 360 for more functional and precise things. But how would you put MeshMixer in there? I know that you design different houses and things like that. Is it more of that functional CAD style software, or what is MeshMixer?
It's less CAD and more working with the clay modeling. You're trying to make a human figurine. You can try to do that in Tinkercad. You're going to have some pretty bulky results. Some Sonic 3D Blast looking results. But in MeshMixer, you can make, there, what's an example? This is something I made in MeshMixer. That's cloud. You can do the stored, no problem in Tinkercad. But MeshMixer is perfect for stuff like that. Not super high detailed things. That would be probably Fusion 360 or what was the other one? I don't use them, but those other options are definitely more high detailed.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we hop off here today, I might have to go download MeshMixer for myself because I'm always looking for something that's that interim between Tinkercad doesn't always have all the stuff that I need in there, but I don't need as much. I get like intimidated and overwhelmed when I go into something like Blender or Fusion. It sounds like that's a happy medium that you're working in.
Yeah.
It's great for a lot of people. Now, for people who aren't familiar, a ton of what you do is you have famous houses that you model. A lot of them are like movie references or different things like that. How do you, I don't see a lot of people go that route with 3D modeling things. How did you get into that side of modeling, and what gave you the idea to go down that path?
Part of it was working in Tinkercad. I was actually in the process of buying my first house when I started doing this. And I modeled. Hadn't printed it yet, never printed it actually, but I modeled my own house. And then my wife was like, why don't you do this? I think the first one I did was the Home Alone house. I didn't even have any intention of putting them online, Etsy, Colts 3D, or any of that. Then someone was like, you should sell this. And I was like, all right. And I started with just little ornaments, and that turned into, that were resin printing at the time. So that was a whole other thing. But that's moved its way into just little miniatures between 3 to 5 inches or a little bit bigger, depending on the Overlook Hotel versus the Haunted Mansion. It's been quite the journey with the houses. It's mostly been either inspired by what I see in a movie or customer commission. Hey, could you do the Evil Dead cabin? Stuff like that. So a lot of it happens organically with what I've been doing. I'd say the majority of the ones have been like just ones I've decided to do. But a very fair amount of them were suggestions from others.
I feel like it's something I never would have thought of myself to get into making or modeling or anything like that. But seeing the ones that you do, I instantly that I'm like, oh man, the possibilities are really endless. I was kind of like scrolling through different things that you've done. I'm like, I wonder if he's done this one. And sure enough, I scroll far enough and I find it. But
Well, if you have any ideas, let me know.
well, when we hop off today, I'll have to send you over a list of ideas that I have. I'm always curious for people who model specific things. Have you had any specific house up until this point that you would say has been like extra challenging or really gave you a run for your money from a modeling standpoint?
I tried with the idea to model them with the idea that it wouldn't need much in the way of supports. Yeah. So that has been the most challenging aspect of most of them. The one that gave me the most trouble has been actually the Haunted Mansion. There's a bunch of pillars that go around the side and the front. No matter what I did to thicken them up, create more density, get those thicker layer lines, walls, whatever, the corners would pop off. And fixing it didn't look pretty. I've moved more towards just using tree supports. But Haunted Mansion has been the most troubling one so far.
It's always interesting hearing that. And for you, when you're working on a new design, is it something at this point where you've done enough of them and you can one and done get it, model it, and like it prints okay? Or is there a lot of iterations usually of getting things to print differently on?
I will spend a lot of time bouncing back and forth between Slicer and Tinkercad just to see if it looks like a wall's not thick enough, so it's coming up non-existent in the Slicer. I might go through 3 or 4 hopbacks before I come up with the final model. And again, I've tried the best to use limited supports at this point. I still use them, but it's not, unless there's a lot of extreme overhangs in the file, it's not normally a big deal. So it's become much more of a streamlined process.
Yeah, it's probably one of those things that as you're doing it, you learn over time. Certain aspects of the houses have to be done in certain ways. So I'm sure over time it probably gets easier, but yeah, looking at them, I'm a terrible 3D modeler myself, and I think to myself, man, that had to take a while to figure out. For you, in terms of, it sounds like getting into selling these, it was, I hate to say like a happy accident, but it sounds like it wasn't like necessarily how you set out on this journey. How has that side of things been so far? Are you mostly at Etsy right now, or are you using other platforms? How has that all been?
Originally, it was suggested that I do it. And I'd seen Uncle Jesse, for example, he'd posted videos like how I made $18,000 last year on Etsy. And I'm like, I would like to do that as well. So it was like, it was something I planned on doing, but it did end up being something I tried. And I've had pretty decent success with it. It's not $18,000 a year. This year's been my best. I'm not going to say exactly where I'm at, but it's been a good year. I'll say 400 sales total in my shop. 300 of them were this year. And that's a huge year. And I want to thank Beetlejuice for that, because I modeled the Maitland house and the Dietz house when that movie came out. But Beetlejuice has definitely gotten better. I have decent feedback. Customer service has always been where my experience working with people comes from. So if there's ever an issue with a house, shipping, etc., I'm pretty giving. Like if I got a pretty low review, but it was because they didn't the size of the product they got. My listings are pretty specific in what you're getting. The pictures are also pretty detailed enough to be like, it's pretty small. But they were like, they called it a scam. And I was like, oh my goodness, no way. Like, that can't let that fly. And I ended up working it out. They updated the review and they were just like, they weren't satisfied with the product, but it wasn't a bad product. They got their money back. I got a better review out of the deal. But working with people has probably been one of the more challenging aspects. Just a lot of questions about things. People like so much clarification. I didn't realize with the houses what I was jumping into, because there's a whole system how they're scaled. Not mine, but in the realm of miniature houses, there's like HO, O scale, and like all these different scales for things. And I get questions about that all the time, and I really need to figure that out. But that's probably been one of the more challenging aspects of doing what I do. And it's more specific to just the miniature sales.
Yeah, it's interesting looking into, I checked out your Etsy before we hopped on here today, and I start going down that path of thinking, like, it seems like there's probably so many facets to it that you wouldn't think unless you're in that very specific world of it. But I saw that you offer a village size, which I'm imagining is maybe similar to what your average person thinks of a Christmas village.
Exactly. You tapped right into that. And that's what I thought when I thought Christmas village. That was what I originally went with these. And then I was like, then there's Christmas miniatures, but the smaller ones. But then I just get the people that have this very specific questions that are in a realm that I'm tapping into slightly, but not immersing myself in, where I'm wanting to figure it out a little bit more because I think I'd be better at what I do if I did.
Yeah, I feel like that's a cool area to grow into, though. It sounds like there's a lot of opportunity there and a lot of probably like subcategories of what you're offering, which honestly, I think it's probably a good problem to have. But yeah, I think for anybody who's sold on Etsy or realistically anywhere, I used to sell houseplants online, and man, if I hit $1 for every time I had somebody who didn't read the description about the size or the pot or something like that, man, I'd have a lot more dollars. Yeah, I think it's it's a common thing online, unfortunately. But no, what you were saying earlier about the movie sparking interest in your products, that's something I was wondering about too, is when certain movies are coming up, and it sounds like this was the case, I'm imagining you're seeing like a spike in interest for that particular house then.
I made it just before the movie came out, and I had sold a couple right leading up to it. And then like after people had started seeing the movie and it was off topic, great movie. Loved the just be oh no. It's on something like Max. You should definitely watch. Yeah. As far as sequels go, top notch. And in Tim Burton's world, he has problems these days. I'm just personal opinion. Great movie. My ADHD is killing me right now.
It's okay.
But no, leading up to like after the movie came out and people started seeing it, I was getting hits. I think October was my biggest month, and no doubt because it came out. Like I sold mostly that house.
Yeah, I think like a good thing for something like that too, like a sequel, and the original Beetlejuice, like that house is so iconic from it, is going into that sequel coming out is you have a baseline for what that house is going to be. Going forward, do you have like, I hate to say chasing movies, but do you have any plans to chase after future movies that come out in that realm?
As it comes along, I'll probably pick and choose ones that do come out, but there's just a wealth of houses for movies. Yeah. Even more obscure movies in all types of genres out there. I tapped in mostly into the horror thriller movies and the Christmas movies, just mostly because those like gift giving holidays type stuff or like decorative holidays. So that's where I was aiming towards. But I get sales throughout the year, so it's not just gift giving. It's people that want to have these things in their home. I have people that I put my main interest in fish tanks.
Oh, nice.
Terrariums. All sorts of different painted sets. I turned the Addams Family house, that's one of my bigger bestsellers, into a dollhouse for someone because they asked. They're like, "Can you make this a dollhouse?" I was like, I haven't thought about doing this seriously, but I thought about it being a possibility. Why not? And I did it, and they were pretty happy with it. There's just many different roads to take, many different opportunities. If you're willing to try, I've been pretty busy.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And yeah, it like I said, it seems like there's probably an almost endless pool out there of different things that you can eventually create over time. For you, hearing about the terrariums was somewhere that my mind instantly went as a houseplant lover, is like a different area that people can put these. But I know you've mentioned terrariums, aquariums, other places that people have put these. Do you ever get customer images back? And has there ever been somewhere super unique or crazy that you've seen one of these end up in?
That's where it's been. And I encourage people to post on their Etsy and post on my, when they have stuff. And that's where I've seen most of these things. I get occasional emails, but yeah, it's pretty crazy what you could, like, where people put these things and like how they paint them differently. And they all look so good. I think they look pretty boring in their base form. The Maitland house right here, it's not exciting, but when you see it done up and then something that resembles where it belongs in the movie, it's pretty amazing. It feels good.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. I know you say that they're not very exciting how they are. I think that they look great as they are when you send them off, but I think seeing it like turn into kind of more of a finished product, if you want to use that word, it has to be like a really cool experience.
Oh yeah,
it's like seeing it transform over time. So.
No, I love that. I'm super excited when people do share pictures with me because it's really never something I expect. Like, I grew up drawing and I never got deep into art, but I always drew, and I didn't for a long time. And then I started doing the 3D modeling, and knowing that pieces of my art are just in people's homes or gifts for people, it's just one of the best things. It feels so good.
Yeah. No, I could totally see that. For you, coming back to getting into this in general, do you have a background or an interest in architecture? It's such an interesting area to me.
I don't. I don't. It might be in my blood. My grandfather on my dad's side was a city planner. But I was never really exposed to a bunch of different buildings and structures and different things. In fact, when I first touched on CAD when I was a kid, back in the Windows 95 days, I was super overwhelming to me. One of my best friends, he had a functioning working of making cool designs in Photoshop. I couldn't do that, but I could sit with a pen and paper and draw anime, basically. I like my thing. And superheroes, of course. I drew stuff like that. I could still sit down and just bust out a Spider-Man or Deadpool or Batman. You're doing something. But I never had any background in buildings, structures, anything like that. Loved horror movies, loved Christmas movies, love my Tim Burton movies, love things that I modeled, and the inspiration I got from them was from all the different things I watched as a kid. Being able to make something like a superhero, a helmet, mask, and make any of that, it blows my mind on a regular basis. I'm constantly amazed about what I do. And I don't think what I do is so great. I'm just amazed that I do it.
Now, I'm always interested in this. It's interesting. Everybody, I think, has their own timeline for how this ends up working out for them. I know you said you didn't have necessarily a formal art background, but when you first decided that you were going to get into 3D modeling, how long was it, would you say, until you got to a point where you felt like, if we want to use the word proficient?
I focused most of my free time on modeling and printing. And then I ended up with a job where I had a lot of time with access to a computer and remote desktop and a lot of free time because there just wasn't a lot to do. So that's where I spent a lot of my time, like accessing MeshMixer from work on my home computer, from the office at work. It was great. Remote desktop, love that. So I spend a lot of time honing my skills, an opportunity I think a lot of people don't have, just to have that extra time to do it without giving up something. I was at work modeling. That's what I did. I love that. I miss that job, but I like what I do now better. But the timeline, I think, like one of my first detailed models I did was of Hero from Legend of Zelda. Okay. The Legend of Zelda franchise, we'll say. And it's pretty detailed model. It's a little bit more on the risque side of things, but I just think it goes to cut and display what I was able to do at the time, like making a female figure clothed respectfully. Look good. Like, I think the views I got, like, the video got taken down eventually because TikTok's the way it is, but I think I had like over 100,000 views and like a very established amount of likes on that video, and it's gone. But that was a benchmark. And I think that was like 2 years into my 3D printing journey, we'll call it. And from there, I've just focused on doing as much medium detail as I can, like making someone's face look like reasonably realistic, but still it's like an anime character. Being able to do that now is so much more streamlined, and that enables me to focus my attention on all the different things I can make and commissions for other people.
Yeah, I think for me, at least, again, being somebody who I dabble in 3D modeling, but I'm by no means proficient in it. A lot of it is, honestly, for me, it feels like just knowing even what tools you have at your disposal in certain softwares and in what circumstances to utilize them is a lot of times like where I get hung up on, and I think I've heard other people get hung up on.
Yeah.
Having that time to really dive into things and really get comfortable, I could see over time just becoming much more of a streamlined process.
It does, and I'll give credit to MeshMixer for that one, because I'll look at Fusion 360 or any other of the modern day paid for applications, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have, what is it? Nomad Sculpt on my phone and my other tablet devices in hopes that I'll use it if I ever travel or while I'm like waiting in between deliveries. And it sits at home because I try and use it, and for some reason, it does not transfer. They'll even have similar icons between them. For some reason, I'm just really good at using MeshMixer. I want to try transferring models over to other applications that work with texture, or so like you can just throw a texture on something, because that's the one thing I'm really missing in MeshMixer is most objects are smooth.
Gotcha.
You might have a little skin dimple, but you're not getting those S patterns all over Superman's suit. Right. Unless someone is watching can let me know, because I don't know. I'm not finding it.
I was laughing earlier. I forget what question I was even asking, but somebody was like, oh, if you really want the answer to any question in the world, just go on Reddit and definitively tell people how to do it wrong, and somebody will come to the rescue and tell you how to do it correctly. Like that strategy. Yeah. No, I always just love hearing people's different journey, and there's so many people I talk to who like want to get into 3D modeling, so I think it's helpful to hear. It's helpful even if it is a longer time. I think it's helpful to know and not get discouraged if like day one in modeling you're having a hard time with it, which I think a lot of people open up their first modeling software and it's hard to figure out and they like just put it down and never pick it back up. I think honestly it's good to hear when people it takes them a while to get proficient with it.
Yeah, I'd say anyone can 3D model. Not everyone can 3D model good. Not everyone can draw. Not everyone can draw well. It's and even people that spend a lot of time doing it don't necessarily get good at it right away. Some people, when I did draw all the time, I got in trouble at school because I was drawing and not doing my schoolwork. That's what it seems to be a running theme is what I'm not supposed to be. It's definitely in everyone's realm, but it's not for everyone. And I would definitely encourage anyone who even doesn't draw to try. My best friend, he was just like, we were just talking about this the other day, and he was like, it's crazy that what you can draw. I can't draw anything. I'm like, you don't try. I see the models you paint, he paints. Warhammer, 40K. And does an amazing job painting that. And I can easily see that translating into drawing. It's definitely there. He doesn't do it. I would always encourage someone to try.
Yeah, I do think a lot of it's just like hours into something, and it's like you were saying in the beginning for everybody, it's finding that time. It's certainly hard, and I guess if you have a job where you can 3D model at work, I guess that's a blessing in disguise.
I wasn't supposed to be 3D modeling at work. Let's put that clear. Like if someone walked up on me, it was Alt Tab. So if you do it, tread lightly. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not advising you to 3D model.
Yeah.
If it were to happen, that might be a appropriate use of time. Yeah, it's definitely, I think it's probably one of those things though that any which way you put it, I think it takes a lot of hours, but it seems like it's definitely a skill that, particularly if you 3D print, it's a great skill to have. So one of the more recent projects that I saw you've been working on, you have these, I don't know really how to describe it. They're like Disney ride cars. It seems like a newer thing that you're working on recently.
So I got this funny thing. My wife did the adult Disneyland thing recently, and I actually had a lot of fun. I'm not like a huge Disney guy, but they have things that appeal to me now more than my youth. And I walked around that place like a kid in a candy shop because I was like, I'm going to make that. I'm going to make that. I'm going to make that too. I soaked up a lot of information and images while I was there. And like a week or two after we got back, randomly, someone hits me up on Etsy and says, hey, can you do this? And I was like, yes. And I have a color 3D printer, and we worked it out, and I made the models. I have 11. I'm not sure if I'm going to try and commercialize them because of how delicate Disney is with their IP. Yeah. I figure the houses are a little bit more loose because it's just property out in the world, right? Yeah. But I have these models. They're all finished. They seem really happy with the images they've received. Right now I'm just getting some gloss coatings because they're small and they're meant to be keychains. And I fear that a couple of them might be a little bit more brittle because they don't have just the structure. For example, the Peter Pan one sec. Here you go. This one is broken. I printed 3 at a time, and I was able to fix the one that she's getting, but this back part broke off. And these are really thin, and that's, I think, a problem. So a lot of coats of clear gloss hopefully will help prevent structural damage. But they're all done. I just finished them. I just am giving them their last coats of paint, and I'll be shipping them off tomorrow. And it's been an interesting experience because they're so small. Getting a lot of high detail out of a filament printer on something that tiny was challenging, especially adding the color in some spots. But again, they seem really happy with the pictures they've received, and I hope they are as happy with what they get in the mail.
From the videos that I saw, I think they definitely will be. I haven't been to Disney in a very long time, but growing up, that was like me and my family thing. We would always go to Disney World, and seeing them, it was like instant flashbacks of so many of the different ones that you had there. It's always such a hard thing around Disney stuff, like you said, to commercialize it with the IP, but man, I could just see people absolutely going crazy for those.
Yeah, and I thought about maybe putting up a listing on Etsy a single listing with the 15 or 10 different variations, but giving them, I don't know, not Winnie the Pooh's, whatever, but Honey Bucket,
Yeah.
which is funny because Honey Bucket is its own thing, but he has honey buckets. Or the Peter Pan's being like pirate ship, whatever.
Yeah.
We call it the listing, maybe theme park miniatures. I don't know. It's all work and I'm lazy. And it takes me away from the actual modeling aspect of things. Like if I had someone to do the Etsy side of things, like all the picture taking and typing up a listing, I love that. It costs me.
Might be a worthwhile venture, but yeah, I think that's something honestly a lot of people struggle with who like whether they're 3D modelers or whatever they're selling is like loving their art, but hating, not necessarily hating, but the business side is not where they want to be. They want to be like focusing on what they do.
Yeah.
It sounds like this is something like that is a challenge for you. Do you have any advice for people who are like struggling with that? Have you found anything that's been helpful or?
Use your resources. I use the USPS website for all. I have a label printer, stuff like little things that make it more streamlined. Have a roll of bubble wrap. Have a box of 6x6 boxes. These little things that just make having those on hand make the Etsy side of things easier. Because once the listing is up, it works on its own. I do occasionally see people damning Etsy for their fees and whatnot. I honestly see it. That's just me. Like, nothing against those people who do see it and call it out. I don't notice it so much. That's just my experience. Etsy does all right by me. They make it so I can buy the postage on their platform. Little things make it easier. Location matters, but using the tools that you have at your fingertips and giving yourself the tools. Sadly, you have to have a decent computer to 3D model on a computer. You can't, but you can get like a tablet and do Nomad sculpts, or even Tinkercad works a little bit on tablets. If you want to model on a computer, you have to have a decent computer, and not just like a decent gaming computer, because it's not like that. You have to have all the processing speed and the power and the graphics. That's why it's not necessarily accessible for everyone, but I've made it work.
That was actually something when I first got into 3D printing, I thought to myself, oh, let's get into 3D modeling super easy. And the first time I went to go open, I can't remember if it was Fusion or Blender, nothing was working on my computer. I was like, oh, I see what's happening here. I'm going to need to invest a lot of money if I want this to work on my computer, which that actually ended up being why I went the route of getting an iPad. It was just a lot more affordable, and I dabble more in Nomad Sculpt than anything else. But yeah, that was definitely something that was unexpected to me for sure when I first tried 3D modeling for the first time, which maybe is obvious to other people, but I guess it wasn't obvious to me.
I had my suspicions just because I had used my gaming PCs in the past for game. And I know that for high intense graphics, you have to have a decent PC. And I just imagine the power of making those things, not necessarily making them move in a game on the performance side, but just modeling them is just, there's just so much more that goes into it on the power side of things.
Yeah, for sure. For you, your base is in making these houses, this really cool project that you've been doing with these Disney ride cars. Any other projects that maybe aren't quite ready yet, but like anything that either is in your pipeline or anything that you really wanted to maybe work on as a project in the near future?
I dabble in all sorts of things, but I have focused a lot of my attention on modeling superheroes, more specifically from the Marvel versus Capcom franchise. And one of the ones I finished, you might have seen the Rogue that I did a while back and the Gambit.
Yeah.
I just finished modeling a Wolverine. I have recently posted that on TikTok. They're all like doing their pose right before their super move. That's the thing. That's what they're all going to be doing. Wolverine's in his stance right about to do a Berserker Barrage or something like that. I haven't printed that yet, but I just finished the model, so I'll be working on that pretty soon. I'm not sure if I'm going to do the color print. I kind of want the detail, so I think I'm going to throw it in the Elgu Saturn. I think does pretty well. My friend hit me up recently. Have you seen that Mazda, the little Mazda Miata that's floating around?
I'm like familiar with Mazda Miatas, but
a 3D model. It's typically a 3D model. It's on Colts, and I saw it a couple times on TikTok. And my friend, who is not like on social media really, he has like an Insta. He hits me up. No, he's also on Reddit. That's where he gets his stuff from. He hits me up and says, "Hey, can you make this? I'll pay you to make this." And I was like, "Okay." And I look at it, and it's got 45 pieces or something to it. It's a lot of little pieces. And I'm like, I will print this for you, but I am not going to paint and I am not going to put it together. Oh my God. So that's one of the things I'm working on right now. And I'll keep it posted up while we still have TikTok available to us here in this country. Besides that, it just hits me and I'll do it. Or unless I have commissions going on, like I just had a commission over the last week I'm doing a Adamus Prime. I don't know if you're familiar with my friend Adam. He hit me up to do a Guy Fawkes themed Luigi mask.
Nice.
That's cool. Yeah, it looks pretty cool. Man, it's an interesting time to be here in the States, where this is where pop culture and recent events collide. So I'm doing that, and that's actually just wrapped that up. So I actually have to send him up to finish the updates I did on that thing. It looked a little bit more smooth, classic Luigi, but he wanted to look a little bit more like the Guy Fawkes aesthetic. So I edged it out a little bit, gave him some points. It still looks like Luigi, and it looks like Luigi Mario specifically.
When you're doing commissions like that, like how much of it is you seeing your vision for what you want it to be, and how much of it is presenting it to the customer and making adjustments from there? Is there a lot of back and forth on processes like that usually? A
lot of it has depended on the client. I wish I had creative reign, but even that's hard because you aren't sure if people are being honest with their feedback. You give it. So, I mean, I like to have an even give and take. It's their product. They're paying for the time and the talent, and they should get what they want out of it. So, I mean, it's a shared responsibility. That's where I'm at. I like to be shared. I don't like to have full creative control because I tend to be a perfectionist, and nothing gets done in art when you're a perfectionist ever. And you can have a brilliant piece of work, and it's not done.
No, it's super relatable. Honestly, I feel like, one of the hardest or scariest things in any project is no restrictions. Restrictions, I think, make things so much easier sometimes. And I think a lot of times people, like, they want to be able to do this or want to be able to do that. But honestly, anytime I've had any kind of project like that, restrictions are really a blessing in disguise, I think.
Yeah. I don't want to be micromanaged by any means, but I want you to have input and share input on your project that I'm working for you. If it's a gift or whatever, I want it to be what your vision is. And that's another thing I really like about it is if someone has a vision for something and you make that reality for them, that is top notch. That's a feel good.
Absolutely. Jordan, we've talked through a lot of different topics today. As we wrap up here, any overall advice you'd give for somebody either looking to get into 3D modeling, maybe looking to sell 3D models, or just get into the realm of things that you do?
Dabble. Don't be afraid to try it. And if you know anyone else who does it, talk to them about it. The people that, my wife's cousin, he wanted to get into 3D printing. And so he would come over and visit. And his mom got him a little tiny, I don't even know what random brand it was, a super tiny 3D printer, a little filament printer. He brought it over and I ended up getting it working with this new printer, and we set up a file and got it working. And he was wanting to get into it. He tapped on my shoulder and I was able to help him do that. I don't think he's moved forward much with it, but it was good to help him at least look into something that he was interested in. And I'd say, and if you're interested in doing it, give it a shot. You might have some success. I've had some success. I will continue to do it either way because I enjoy it. And that's why I did it in the first place, because I enjoyed it.
I love that. I think everybody needs that one thing in their life that enjoy and makes them happy. And it sounds like for you, that's something that you found. So that's great. For people who don't follow you already and want to just follow along with the different things that you have going on, maybe you want to order something from you specifically, where can people find you online?
At DDD Forge is where you can probably tap into most things that are me, whether it be Instagram. My link tree is /DDD Forge, and that has all my links on it. So if you want to go to linktr.ee DDD Forge, you will find all of my other links to my TikTok as long as it's up, all of my models that are available on Colts 3D, and my Etsy link.
With that said, I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on here. It was super interesting learning about your different projects, all the things that you're going on. And with that said, that has been Meet the Makers.